Good morning, Vikings fans. This is Morning Joe's, brought to you by our friends at manscaped.com. It is almost Halloween, and it's almost No Shave November. So if you want to prep for that and avoid ingrown hairs in the worst possible place, go to manscaped.com and use our discount code Morning Joes. That's all one word, Morning Joes. You get 20% off and a free shipping on your next or first order. Just in time for No Shave November. Take care of your pumpkins, I think was the copy they wanted me to read, but I couldn't find it, so I ad-libbed. I'm your host for now, Joe Johnson, owner of PurplePTSD.com, VikingsTerritory.com, and PurpleTerritoryRadio.com. We also have a new Minnesota Wild site launching in the next couple weeks called MiniIce.com, and we're going to be looking at launching a Minnesota Gophers website called Gophers Territory in the next couple months as well. So, got that going for us. I'm here with, as always, Mr. Joe Olberly. How you doing, man? Uh, they they were, and then I got manscaped, and then they fell off, and so I might be an octave higher than usual. Yeah,
So that's pretty cool as well.
I figured we should diversify our portfolio as the Vikings are terrible, and I don't want to talk about them for a living anymore. I'm kidding,
Hmm.
but I figured, the Gopher. I'm not okay. So I used to be a really big hockey fan. I would even say that it was on par with the Vikings. But and I cringe when I say this still, just because of the way things were back when I was in high school. I grew up a Red Wings fan, which I used to get a ton of shit for because they were essentially the Yankees of the NHL before the salary cap was implemented, and those were the best days ever. Not so much because they basically had an all-star team, but because those games between the Red Wings and the Colorado Avalanche when they were in the same conference were the best hockey ever. It was just 2 years in a row they had that Patrick Waugh versus Chris Osgood or Mike Vernon skating full speed at each other and just fighting in the middle or like in between the blue lines. It was great hockey. Um, I will say that I'm not a front runner or fair weather fan because if I was, I want to be a Vikings fan. But the last game I remember going to for the North Stars was against the Red Wings, and Sergei Fedorov had a hat trick, and I just thought he was the coolest person on the planet. So,
Hmm.
like your story before we started the show, Mr. Oberly, I used to wear a Fedorov Olympic hockey jersey from Russia, obviously, and I used to get yelled at constantly by random people calling me like I was communist basically like I was walking around with
Hmm.
a hammer and sickle and supporting Marxist Leninism.
CCCP.
Yeah, the good old
Yeah.
days.
Yep.
Anyway, how are you handling the season? I mean, we talked last week obviously, and I'm doing like 10 different shows now, and so they all blend together, especially when I'm snorting hydroxychloroquine every in between each episode. But
Nice.
I remember saying uh, before the Seahawks game, imagine if they did win this game. Wouldn't that be amazing? What would happen? And then I remember during the game thinking, "Oh my God, they might do it." And I thought it was such a left field shot that I said, wouldn't it be amazing if that happened, as if it was like some Super Bowl aspiration. And then last week it was almost the reverse of that. Imagine how bad things would be if they lost to the Falcons, assuming that there's no way the way that they played against the Seahawks that they would fall to a team with no wins. Granted, they had a new head coach, and that sometimes gives you 1 or 2 week boost, like
It does.
hydroxychloroquine. Um, and so who knows? Maybe the Falcons are better than everyone thought. They had Julio Jones back, but it's basically opened the floodgates for a ton of criticism. It's basically things are as bad as they've ever been under Zimmer. It's in disarray. Every article's about firing this person, trading that person. Let's blow up the team. Let's not do it. I mean, where are you at on things?
Every article that isn't about Sid is about that. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true. That was a bad loss, but I hate to say this kind of thing because people it seems not grounded in reality sometimes. But for me, and it's always been this way. It's a game of emotion. You play once a week. You get beat up on Sunday, and then by Wednesday you crawl out of the wreckage and try to get back on the field and try to motivate yourself and learn what you're supposed to do and get ready to go again on Sunday. And sometimes you just don't do it as a team. And no matter how fiery your coach is or how good your players are, and I thought early. I mean, after the deflating, Zimmer probably tried to inject some life into his team by taking the ball and putting the offense out there and taking a big strike right out of the gate. And they were almost done after one play, one
Yeah.
offensive play. And
It
you
felt
know,
that
you
way.
saw you saw how the next series how the Falcons came out and just were fired up and stopping them behind the line. It was, and they're jumping up and down. It's like, okay, that's the script. They're fired up. They got a new coach. They got a new GM. They got new life, and they're going to play above their heads for a week and they're going to prove that they deserve to be on the team. Meanwhile, Vikings lost in dispiriting fashion in Seattle in a game they should have won, and limped home on plane flight home and just did not pull themselves out of this hole. How many times have we seen this with this team? And it's probably happened elsewhere along the way. They were done, and I wrote it. I said this is. I wrote it. I tweeted earlier. This thing is not going in the right direction. I mean, after two series, the time of possession was already back to where it was in the first 2 weeks of the season. I said,
Yeah.
this team is done. Unless they have some kind of miracle turnaround, a defensive turnover that reinvigorates the Viking squad, this is not going to go well. And it went. Oh God, it went terribly. So what a ball game. I mean, you said before last week's game, and when we talked to you, that you weren't even sure you wanted to watch him anymore. I said, oh, I want to. And I sat there halfway through and said, God, I think I might agree with Joe. I don't want to. I don't want to watch this.
No.
It was so bad, and it you know it's so like I say, it's a game of emotion, and if you're not up for it, and the other team is, it's like slogging uphill through molasses in January to try to get back above them. You have to have something that fires you up, and they gave them life. They gave them, two turnovers right away, and that's all these guys needed. And they were playing downhill for the rest of the game, and the Vikings were they needed some hydroxychloroquine. By
They,
the way,
you know.
is that a new sponsor for Morning
Yeah.
Joe's? Just curious.
Yeah.
Okay.
This Russian guy dropped off a briefcase full of rubles, and I figured, why not? Um, yeah, things are really bad, and we can delve into um parts of the game that I guess are worth talking about in a minute, but because of my post-COVID brain fog, I buried the lead, which was, as you so professionally hinted at, in a way only I would pick up with my massive insecurities. You wrote a really great piece. Everyone, like you said, has been writing about Sid Hartman because he touched so many people. Um, in the industry, either through personal experience or reading his stuff. I remember, I actually just found this picture on Google image search when I was a sophomore in high school. My sister was a senior at Minneapolis South, and I was on the hockey team. I made varsity my sophomore year, and my sister was on the citywide girls team called the Novas at the time, which I think was what the boys team was named a couple years. I don't know. Anyway, she was considered the consensus best goalie in the state, and so every year the Novas weren't very good. They had like two good players, but they would always get to the game before states because my sister would like save like 80 shots to like 10, but they'd always lose like 1-0. So my senior, so she would train with us in the summer during our like dry land and skating at Parade Ice Arena, and then go back to the Novas in the winter. And she decided her senior year to play for the boys team, which ended up putting us on the front page of the News Star Tribune sports section with two brothers and a sister that played for Fridley, coincidentally enough, your stomping grounds. And we went down to a couple of different Star Tribune buildings, one to take some pictures and another to answer some questions. And I remember walking by and seeing Sid Hartman on his typewriter and thinking it was like even back then it must have been 2001, thinking like why is he still using a typewriter? And he was just angrily typing something and he was on the phone and just very boisterous, and that always stuck with me. I thought that was just the coolest thing, seeing Sid Hartman in real life. But that's about as close as I ever got to him. But you wrote a really great story that people I think really appreciated and have been consistently reading, and I wanted you to kind of go into your experience is with him.
Oh well, thanks. Yeah, it was. I'm not writing that much this year, and I was really moved to do something here. I uh, after he passed, something that some of us thought was never going to happen, and I said, as I wrote in the lead, I wanted to know what he died of because it couldn't have been old age that hadn't gotten
Yeah.
him to this point. But um, the stories that have been coming out have really started to reveal who he is. I mean, I heard Chad, his son, talk on KFan with Barrero, and Pat Royce's been everywhere talking about him. And in fact, before I go further, you got to read Patrick Royce's column today in the Star Tribune because he writes it like Sid. He writes in Sid's voice and Sid's style, and with jottings and everything. The same thing. It was inspired. It was hilarious. But anyway. I found out. I realized here's this guy who's at the top of the sports in this city and nationally known in many ways, and for decades. And there's a statue of him downtown, and you're wondering why this guy is still cranking stuff out at in his 90s, and
Yeah.
you come to find out that both Chad said that he's the most competitive person that he's ever met. And he said Royce would compete with everybody in town, but he would even compete with his coworkers at the Star Tribune and his son Chad when it came to booking guests on WCCO radio. It's like, if Chad got somebody, Sid had to get him first, for his show. It's like, oh my goodness. Well, it shed new light on an experience I had with him. And I wrote about it in the story where I wrote George Mikan's autobiography for him and with him, and uh, I was talking to people all over the country, but Bill Russell and uh, I talked to a bunch of NBA stars because I was working at the Timberwolves at the time, and Jerry West, and who have all these different people about Mikan, and I had to get Sid because Sid was the GM of the Lakers at the time, and basically brought Mike into town and the Lakers to town, and so I needed to talk to him. He kept putting me off and putting me off, and and he finally says, interview everybody else you got to talk to, then come back to me and I'll talk to you. So it got to that point where I didn't have anybody left but him, and I kind of wanted him early so I could get some background on it, but instead he wanted to push me off again. I said, nope, I got to have it now. My deadline's coming up, and he so he does the interview, and I don't want to say terrible, but he gave me nothing. He didn't want to give any insight into this, the formation of the Lakers. And I would
Was it
say
just like one word answers,
it
basically?
wasn't that bad, no, but it was he's actually, if you read the book, he's precious, precious few quotes from him because none of them were great. You wanted something where he gave you a little bit more. I mean, I had the stories from talking to everybody else, and he was basically confirming them. And I said, God, you're the central figure in these stories. I mean, he took Mike, and when Mike came here to possibly sign,
Yeah.
Sid famously drove him around town, got lost getting back to the airport, so he'd missed his plane, had to stay overnight, and then they signed him the next day.
That
If we
might
had,
be the greatest story ever.
it is, and I wanted Sid to talk about it, and he basically, yeah, that's kind of what happened, and it's like, come on, man, give me some. Anyway,
Yeah, you gotta get it from his perspective. You can't just
exactly.
explain it and say. And then Sid added, "Yes, yeah."
If I'm doing my job, well, anyway, then I meet up with Mike and at the Timberwolves in the media center, and Mike and brought me some books when it came out, and Sid's there, and he comes up and starts talking to us, and he was trying to wheedle his way a book, and I got him under my arm, and I'm still kind of ticked at Sid because he didn't really help me, and so Sid finally says, "Well, how come that guy gets all those books?" And I turned to him, and I didn't hold back. I said, "Because I wrote it." And that was mad, and it was really, I didn't know, hadn't really met him. I'd seen him around, but I was so ticked off that that's why I said, well, then a little while later, George pulls me aside and said, hey, we got to give Sid a book. And I said, yeah, I know. And so I'd already scrolled him away. I went and got it and gave it to him. But it was, you know, anyway, it took me a while. I was kind of mad because I didn't have him. But as I learned later on, is certainly when all these stories coming out, how competitive it was, I realized that Sid was writing his biography at the same time, or Pat Royce was. So he was holding back because he didn't want to give it all up to
Yeah.
me. And it took me a long time to realize. I said, well, of course. Well, that makes sense. I wouldn't have probably done it either. I wouldn't want to give all the good stuff to some other guy. And so, and as I summed up the article, I said, I told a few other stories about Sid that were kind of less flattering, and I finally said, I realized about him is that he, on some level, considered me a rival, and
Yeah.
there's less things you can hang your hat in this business on less things than that. So I felt pretty good about that.
That's a really cool honor of
Yeah,
sorts.
I thought so. He didn't come out and say it, but that's why he wasn't giving me anything, because he didn't want to. Because it was like they were months apart when they were released. And I was going, oh God, why
And
didn't you just tell me that?
there's like another level of competition too, because he just wanted to get more books than like you did. Like, you know what I mean? Why does he get all the books? I don't get any. Like, let me get more than him. It
Oh, Lou
seems
Nanny
like,
was on the radio talking. I'm sorry, just one thing. Lou
oh
Lanning
yeah.
was on the radio talking about how he had a book come out at the same time, and Sid came down when Louis was at Barnes and Noble's having a book signing. Sid goes upstairs, grabs a bunch of his books and brings them down and puts them right on the counter next to Louis, so he could get more sales than Louis, one of his great friends. It's like, wow, wow, what a dude.
Yeah, I mean, he was working tirelessly up until recently. He
Yeah,
still had a column in the paper. I remember when Cousins came here for his press conference, he knew, he must have learned who Sid was and made a joke. I think it was like one of the first things he said. Um, but he was there for that. I mean, yeah, just what a towering figure in an industry that is so different now, that I wonder if we'll ever have someone like that again.
no
Um,
chance,
you
no
know,
chance. Yeah,
you wouldn't think so. I mean, just in terms of everything, but even just that story about getting lost on the way to the airport, that would never happen now. Um,
no,
you
no. You got Google.
yeah, and there'd be a limo and a private plane and all of that. So yeah, just what an amazing dude, and what a huge impact on everybody.
You
Um,
thought he never was going to go, and
no,
and and
100
it
years old.
sometimes, when he competed with you, he would tick you off when you're sitting there out in Winter Park grinding for quotes with him. He would make you mad because he got special treatment, which he earned, but he would also take over some of the things that the rest of us were trying to do, and so you'd get a little mad at him. But I always thought, when's this guy going to retire? And then I thought, when he does, we're going to miss him. Well,
Yeah.
he died with his boots on. My hat's off to him. Good for you, Sid. Good on you. What a career, and what a legacy you leave here. And it's sad to see him gone, but they're still telling stories in him. There was more stories in the paper today about him, so it's phenomenal.
Yeah, I saw something about how resting wasn't an option for him. I think that's a really good way to put it, because he was just one of those guys who, personality wise or whatever, just never, rested on their laurels and just kept
No,
working. It's,
I don't know
you
what
know,
drove that. I mean, the way Chad and some others talked, there was some massive insecurity going on there,
yeah,
because it sounded like he was going to keep going because he was afraid he was going to lose his job. And it's, man, Sid, I think they'll let you write until you don't want to anymore. And he had a column in the paper on his final day, which is totally
isn't
amazing.
isn't that, and I know maybe that's, not to be armchair psychologist or something, but maybe that's from growing up when he did. It's that generation went through more than any generation has, and
Yeah,
there's a lot of, my grandpa was born in 1912, and he was the type of person who, never wasted anything from, food or whatever. It's
right,
just,
right.
when you grow up that way, um, it
Children
just,
of the Depression. Yeah, my
yeah,
parents same way. Yeah, and Sid never finished high school, and he probably saw all these changes coming in, and he figured the only way he could keep up and stay ahead was to work harder than everybody else, and
Yeah.
probably something that's always stuck with him. And I can see that. He grew up. His dad was probably or I heard that he was an alcoholic, and so Sid was out there selling papers at 8 years old to bring money into the family. So it's like those kind of things build up in you, and they leave a mark in you that's indelible, and that you never lose. So
So he
I
basically worked for the paper almost his entire life.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, and I should have dropped, the fact to him that I delivered it for 6 years, and I had
Yeah.
actually had a desk there for 6 months. I was working on a project, but then they sold the paper and they cut the project, so I was let go. But I should have said, "Hey, Sid, yeah, I'm one of your coworkers
Yeah.
at Star Tribune. Cut me a little slack here." But he
That just
didn't
probably would
want
have
to.
added another level of competition to it.
Exactly.
You come into
Nobody like him.
you come to work and your desk's half the size it was before. Yeah, it's yeah, you just never thought he was gonna be gone, and so he won't be though. His legacy's out there. There's stories like this, and I got to read that Royce article.
It's
That
funny.
sounds great.
It's funny.
To be honest, that's when you've written for us, I get that vibe from you, the way that your stories are constructed more so like they just feel a lot more professional than especially my stuff, but the way that they were broken down into game wraps and then trending, like who's up, who's down, what is improving or what's ending. uh I got a Sid vibe from a lot of your stuff, so
Hmm.
he and I mean that in the best way possible.
Well,
uh,
thank you.
um
Oh, you
yeah.
genius.
But yeah, I mean, the one of the sadder things I saw that I didn't really put together on Twitter was a picture of him, and I think it was Brzezinski might have done it, or some, maybe it was a player for the Vikings, uh, basically saying like, sorry that we couldn't win you a championship while
Oh,
you were
wow.
around. It may have been Brzezinski, but I was like, yeah, man, think about that.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's
I mean,
been cognizant of this team for he or was cognizant of the team the entire time, and
he helped
nothing.
bring him here,
Yeah, and
and he passed away sometime during the game on Sunday. So I
I
mean,
don't
there's
blame him.
certainly a line there to
Yeah,
uh, to make. I won't make it, but
yeah.
yeah.
Um,
Um,
yeah, it's rough. I mean, there, like I said, there's maybe a few things to talk about in that game. I mean, obviously Justin Jefferson had another great game. Nine catches on 11 targets, I think 166 yards, a pair of touchdowns. He's on pace to have the best rookie season in regards to yards since like the 50s, I believe. He's
wow.
on pace to beat Randy Moss's rookie record for the team, which is 1,313 yards. He put
He's never going to do that, though, don't you? Because Randy Moss played for a NFC Championship team. Jefferson does not. And they're going to figure out how to shut Jefferson down at some point. Maybe put a little more, couple bodies on him as opposed to my guy Adam Thielen, who's on my fantasy team and not doing as well, unfortunately. Um, uh, I just think, yeah, he's been fantastic. Jefferson's been fantastic, and it's great to see. I'm so heartened to see him put him outside and he make plays out there. See the contested catches. He's running good routes. He's making. He's shown very good hands.
yeah.
And already Cousins has got some trust in him because he seems to look for him quite often. And but I don't see how they can sustain it, on this team because Moss was on a team with Chris Carter and Jake
Yep.
Reed and Robert Smith, and all these other things. Now granted, they got a pretty good offense with Thielen and Cook, but they don't have the offensive line
Exactly.
that
Yeah.
makes it so. I mean, it's wonderful. I think you're going to find teams if we're watching tape on the Vikings, they're going to probably start focusing on Jefferson a little bit more, and um, we'll see that maybe change a little bit, but. I hope he does, though. It'd be wonderful to see him do it. It's pretty
I
something. Excuse me. It's really something if you can erase Randy Moss out of the top of the record book
you
in
know
anything. Yeah.
He feels a lot like I've done this multiple times. He looks a lot like Moss to me. I get conflicting measurements on how tall he is. Like Google
Hmm.
says 6'1", and then I see 6'3", but he's so lanky that he
Yeah.
runs route like that double move that he had. He doesn't look like he's moving that fast, or that he's even in control of his routes because he get his. I don't know really how to put it. He just looks. His limbs are so long that they kind of look loose and like
Hmm.
guppy-ish in a way that he doesn't look like he's running a really tight, great route like Diggs or Thielen does. But clearly,
Right.
having that double move he had was astounding, and the way that he jumps up over guys. Um,
I
he
don't think
just
he's as
does.
fast as Moss.
No, no way. I mean, nobody really is, but he just has some aspects of Moss's game or aesthetic rather that um remind me of it. And then you got obviously the dynamic between him and Thielen, like Carter and Moss. But no, yeah, nobody got over the top as fast as Moss. I mean, he was God, he was super fast, but he's just doing things that again, uh, saying he was going to make teams that didn't draft him pay. That was very Moss-ish. Um, but the types of catches he's making on the outside, on the inside, across the middle, contested, not contested, it's just he's been spectacular. And right now he's outside of what's his face, his former quarterback, probably the front runner for rookie of the year, which is at least something to look forward to. I mean, I think we're at the point in the season where essentially we're going to be looking at not tryouts for next year, but like positive things to look forward to or development of players. I mean, Ezra Cleveland had his first start um, Sunday, and a lot of people were saying he did a pretty good job. He had like a 43 PFF rating. I just think it's almost like BC Johnson and how people thought he was maybe better than he was because we were used to Treadwell playing. I think people are looking at that game a little bit better than they were just because Samia didn't end up playing. But I don't
Yeah.
know if you had a chance to really pay any attention to his game or what he did, but I would be surprised if they go back to Samia at this
I don't think he had four penalties called on him, so I think that's a good thing.
point.
Uh,
Isn't that sad? That's the standard.
right. No, we learned couple weeks ago that Samia is pretty good at run blocking and terrible at pass blocking, and I didn't feel like uh, Cleveland stood out as that deficient. He got pushed back a couple times, and but in his first game as a rookie, I thought he uh, 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 did well for himself and warrants another look. It's 2 weeks ago it was terrible to watch. Cleveland. I mean, everything Samia. So I guess by me not noticing that much, maybe that's a good thing, and hopefully it can improve. And this team is rebuilding even more so now, so you might as well take a good look at those guys and get them all in there.
Yeah, and there's a lot of articles, like dueling articles from the Strib and the Pioneer Press. Essentially, this one of them says Ezra Cleveland, Vikings left tackle of future, makes on-field debut at right guard from a day ago, and then the Pioneer Press one is rookie Ezra Cleveland still the Vikings left tackle of the future. And I know what the team thinks and does is obviously different than what people write. Um, but there's been a lot of people I think who have assumed it's a foregone conclusion that he's going to stay at guard because everyone's saying, well, they probably won't be able to tank for Trevor, but they could get a good left tackle. Which if you
Right.
that makes sense on more than that level, I suppose. Obviously if you have a top 5 pick and you're not looking, if there's not a quarterback who suits your fancy or whatever, then what's the other biggest need on this team? Offensive line. You don't draft a guard 3, so
Right.
you could either trade down or look for a left tackle to replace Riley Reef, who's been spectacularly mediocre despite the fact that he's paid a lot of money. Um, I don't really know where to put that. I think it's kind of a very Vikings-ish situation for us to ask that question because I don't think a lot of teams who draft a guy who is labeled as the future of the tackle position, end up moving him to guard in general, or
Hmm.
because of injuries or whatever. It just I fear that that move will screw up his the mental aspect of his game and what he was used to doing. But
We all
I'm
got
just
stars from Remmers and who's the one before that? That the tackle they put into guard and then he's gone.
TJ Clemmings.
That's the other one, yeah. So I'm sure those scars are still here. When you got bodies that are on the IR and can't get on the field, you got to put somebody there. So I'd read somewhere that Cleveland paid guard at least 1 year. I don't know if it was high school or college, so
It
it's
must
not
have been
like
high school because from what I understand, he never played it um in college. But he also played for a smaller conference in college, Mountain West, I think, and it's not
mm.
like he was going against a ton of super big, super athletic guys like you would get in the SEC or what conference are the Gophers in again?
Oh
Um,
my.
I forget, but I've heard it's the best. Um, and so maybe that was always the plan but he also, I mean, people were saying he was Brian O'Neill 2.0 physically in terms of what they saw on tape, and that's a pretty great comparison to make, even though O'Neill's having a down year himself thus far. But it's just I am so sick of talking about the offensive line, to be completely honest with you. Um, I don't really know what their plan is. I asked Wabi and AJ because they have more team access than I've ever had. Last week on the Three Deep with Wabi. Tomorrow night on Three Deep with Wabi, Bryant McKinney is stopping by. Next week it's going to be
That's some offensive tackle talk then.
there you go, and then next week is Matt Burke.
My
Um,
good.
I know, and then Tice is the week after that, so it's kind of a little offensive line reunion. So I guess I shouldn't be sick of talking about the offensive line, but yeah, I mean, I just really hope that I don't know. I mean, I've been writing this series of articles because everyone's talking about Zimmer being fired. Um, and to be completely honest with you, and I should have put this as a disclaimer on the first part. Um, One of the main things you ingrained in me when I joined Vikings Journal, and then after that from being my mentor in this crazy industry, is to really not call for people's jobs unless it's warranted or not to do something like because these are guys with families and lives and
Yep.
I don't the only other time that and I'm not even saying they should fire them. I'm just saying these are things that in my opinion are fireable offenses. Um, and I don't think I'm alone since everyone's writing about it. But the only other time I did that was with Mike Prefer, and that was again solely based on the field product. And it turns out he spurned the team strangely enough after that, which was very true. But the team does pay attention to stuff like this, and so I don't do it lightly either. I remember we had a writer who checked all the negative boxes in terms of what the team was looking for. He didn't use his real name. He used like a Reddit username, and he was calling for the firing of not a prefer but the assistant
Yes.
special teams coach. And when I talked to the team last year about getting a press pass for camp, after they had kind of put an edict out that no non-traditional media was going to be able to go to camp, he had that article printed out from 6 months prior. The and he basically was saying that coach came into his office with the article printed out and like he was really upset and said why like this is I, kind of a hit job and I like they're calling for my job and I have mortgage and all this stuff and they knew like how many clicks the article had gotten, how many comments they had gotten and how supportive those comments were. Therefore we had created this mini movement about somebody's job and that
Wow.
really I took responsibility for it because I obviously own the sites and I approved that article at some point. I don't remember doing it, but it's to me it's not something that I do lightly is my point and I don't think is done it should ever be taken lightly but the first part of that article, the fireable offenses of Zimmer and Spielman, has been the continued lack of investment in the offensive line via a lot of people are saying well the Cousins contract draft picks cost the same regardless of what position they are now with the way the CBA works and so it doesn't take more than maybe a second round pick, but a third, fourth, or fifth round pick to get some depth at the interior. And it just feels like if they didn't learn their lesson with 15 picks in the draft and they ended up taking an actual guard 15th, I just feel like maybe they'll finally get to that point. But this team just feels so um, disconnected from where it's been. They don't really feel like they're
I don't
buying
know.
Zimmer selling anymore. There's a lot of other problems, but it always comes back to the offensive line to me, and I'm over it. Something needs to change.
Well, you know what you're going to hear from me because you kind of prefaced it. I'm not. I'm not. You're not going to hear me calling for somebody's head. That's not a decision I have to make, and that's not a decision I want to be part of that decision making process. And there is some slight bit of not power, but maybe influence that you just demonstrated by that assistant special teams coach to print out the article and bring it into the PR staff and have it get back to us is that's not nothing. And I can certainly understand it from that guy's point of view and the Vikings' point of view, and it's something that having worked in the Timberwolves and really close to a PR staff, uh, I certainly understand how real these kind of things are to that department at that organization. So you're not going to hear me say it. I will agree with you as far as Spielman. I mean, in over the years, over the past 10 years, I mean, I was calling for the offensive line help a long time ago, and it became the drumbeat since then. Not that I was first one to see it. I'm not saying that, but I have been frustrated because that's where I thought they were lacking. My dad had always told me this game's won in the trenches, and
Yeah,
I've
me
always
too.
I've always viewed it from that perspective, and I really saw it happening with this team, and they were too often going after the shiny new toys. But what you just said for this last year, 15 draft picks, and they don't grab a guard until the seventh round.
And it's
One of their last.
the pick before Mr. Irrelevant, the second to
Oh
last
my
pick
goodness, that
in
is
the
that
draft.
is negligence on their part. I don't know what they were going after. I knew they had to rebuild the defense, and I knew they had to get a receiver just to certainly make up for the loss of Diggs and there are other things and Zimmer's always said never enough quarterbacks. Well, he didn't have any, so they had to go after a bunch. But it's still you should have been able to find a decent maybe at that point they were all the same. I don't know, but I think you want to spend one of the higher ones up on your offensive line, which has struggled certainly since you're going to invest all that money in your quarterback. My goodness, come on now. And
That's
this is
part
a
of it.
quarterback that needs it perfect around him. You've got to understand that everybody else does. So anyway, I'm
That's
still
the second part two of it that I wrote late last night. Um, the Cousins contract, knowing what we know now, but what everyone knew at the time, that he is not good under pressure. I think he's done an admirable job considering, last season he had 26 touchdowns, 6 interceptions.
last season.
Yeah, against behind the 27th ranked offensive line. I mean, eventually those type of things always catch up with everybody. People get gun shy. Even Favre did in 2010. Um, he's the second most accurate quarterback in NFL history by a full percentage point. He's about 0.9% behind Breeze, but he's 0.9% above the third person, and that's
And
not
he's
all.
really accurate when he's throwing to the other team this year.
Yeah.
Sorry.
he
Sorry.
that the he's not accurate because he dumps the ball off a la Sam Bradford in 2016. He's not accurate solely in garbage time, but he's having a terrible season, and I'm not going to sugarcoat that. But at the same time, he did things the last 2 seasons that I think he deserves some credit for, considering last season there were points from the entire season, but even when he was mirroring Patrick Mahomes' 2018 season almost identically from weeks 5 to about 12, where he literally could not stand in the pocket. He had to roll out or do bootlegs um, to move the chains. And there were games like the Kansas City game where we were harping on Kevin Stefanski for not rolling the ball or rolling him out more, as if that was normal, as if it was like other teams have to flee where the pocket normally would be to complete a pass, and I know that's one of the main reasons that I've wanted to have Mike Tice back on the show. Outside of the fact that we promote his podcast for him exclusively, Odds and Ends with Mike Tice. Is that he's kind of come out is most recently in talking to Chris Thomason of the Pioneer Press and really questioning the zone blocking scheme that the Vikings have under Kubiak and Rick Dennison, and saying that that is good for the run game, but he still, it's Tice, so he doesn't say things um, really as directly or negatively as maybe I would, but he still questions, is the way he put it, whether or not it can create a clean pocket or a pocket at all in the passing game. And the Vikings have essentially traded having a good run game for having any semblance of pass protection. And I think that just, I mean, there were a lot of people who I was up in arms after some of the moves they made this offseason. I know they had salary cap issues, but I'm not surprised Trey Waynes had left because they weren't going to pay him 14.5 million. Xavier Rhodes, obviously, but Linval Joseph, losing him, I thought was bad. And a lot of people told me I was overreacting until the Josh Klein move, and then there were people who disagreed with me who were like, "All right, I officially have no idea what the hell they're doing." Klein was somewhat of a positive influence in the run game, especially, but also in the pass game on the right side. And it felt like, wow, they have a guy who's 27 in Klein, Brian O'Neill. They have Bradbury, who didn't have a great rookie year, but who clearly had potential. And they got rid of that because of his inability to quote unquote get to the second level. And it's like, well, Samia can't do anything. Elfline can't do anything. And so just shuffling around bad guys and getting rid of it just feels like whenever they get some semblance of depth or something, they get rid of it. Alex Boone, I know, was a prick. He came in overweight. But they said they liked that edge when they brought him in. They said they liked that personality, that meanness, that what was Sperano's term, maulers. They like big maulers like that. And then they draft a guy, or they get some depth, and then they get rid of Boone. It just is. I don't know. You can't run it an offensive line this way. First of all, second of all, you can't, for salary cap reasons, say, okay, well, now we have a different guy, and so instead of having any depth, let's just get rid of the guy behind him because he costs a little bit more than the veteran minimum. You have to have a good offensive line in this league. It's a passing league. We're trying to run the team like it's the 2000 or 1998 Denver Broncos, and it's just not going to work, clearly, because it hasn't. So that's where I'm at with that. I don't think we disagree on
Well,
really
if I could,
much outside of the answers to that question. But to
if
be
it,
honest with you, I don't even agree with firing Zimmer, because who would want this job? Cousins is locked in till 2022. There's a lot of confusion about his contracts. A lot of people are saying, well, they can cut him after the 2021, and the dead cap is only 10 million for him, but his entire 2022 contract is guaranteed after the third day of operations in 2021. So I don't think that is how that works. I mean, it's fully guaranteed. Therefore, if you cut him before 2021, it's 40 million against the cap and dead cap space for next season, and then 10 the season after that. But if you keep him, you can't cut him after that. So
um,
what?
can I jump in?
Yeah, I mean, I hope so. I mean, yeah, I mean, I really don't know what to do, to be honest.
I want to do a Mike Pence and go back and answer a previous question. No, I just want to put one fine point on the whole Zimmer discussion. Is for me, the whole deal is you don't fire somebody until you know who your replacement is,
Hmm.
and it looks like right now they left that they let that nice that smart young new hot offensive coordinator slash head coach go to Cleveland. So I don't see anybody who's the next big deal, the next Shanahan and McVay and or all these different guys that who do they got over in Green Bay? All those guys. I don't see that next guy out there because that was Stefanski, and he's gone. So um, I don't think you fire him. I think you let Zimmer uh, boil in the stew, him and Spielman, for the rest of the year, see if they can dig themselves out. If they can't, maybe they'll be so bitter they might want to leave at the end. Who knows? But I don't think he can do that. I don't think it's a wise move. And I think, like I said a week ago, Zimmer builds defenses, and he is he's already got a defense there's some bright things about some positive things coming out of these young guys that are getting their chance to play, and they're going to figure it out in a year or two and maybe really be ready to go. Now, granted, the rest of the defense will be much older then, so who knows? But I don't think you can do that. But maybe if you want to go on to Cousins, he had a bad game. Two of those three interceptions are on him. There are two of them. I tweeted as soon as I saw that first play, I said Thielen was open behind him, and that's who the play was designed for. But he didn't even look up at him, and maybe it's
Yep.
because he's panicked about his offensive line. He threw it into double coverage on Jefferson, and Thielen was just streaking. He was gone if he just puts a little air in it and drops it into him. And that's Cousins. That's what we're going to get. I mean, Zimmer even said it. It's his most frontal he's ever said. Maybe he predetermined some things before snaps that were wrong, and maybe he didn't look around enough to find who he should have. So for him to say that, I don't know if it's making himself look better or it's what it's doing, but that was kind of interesting to hear him say that. So Kirk is really regressed, and as we go on to the most improved or
Yep.
least improved, or one who's regressed the most, he's my guy for this year so far, because he was good last year. His stats were good. He led the team to a playoff victory, and for most of the season, I thought he was really decent, and made me think, yeah, it was okay to re-up him, even though conditionally. But this year, he's gone backwards for whatever reason, and part of it is perhaps getting afraid of that offensive line and not trusting it, even though it's slightly better, I believe, than last year, isn't it?
I can't imagine. I don't know. I can't. I mean, Elfline was bad last year, but under Samia, I can't imagine it would be. I know both
Yeah, but
Samia.
that was just one game, though, wasn't it? Wasn't
Well,
Samia one?
Samia was bad, was pretty bad the entire time. Dakota Dozier's been bad.
Yeah, that's true.
Riley Leaf has been okay. Bradbury's been better. Brian O'Neill's been worse, but he's.
Bradbury's my most improved.
I would say definitely that's where I would
Yeah.
go to. I think outside of that, there's. I mean, Irv Smith Jr. has done better the
Irv
last two
Smith, I
weeks.
thought about Eric Wilson, certainly.
I was gonna say if I was gonna say like the most underappreciated guy, it'd be Eric Wilson. But um, Bradbury deserves credit for being the most improved. He's done a lot better, especially considering he doesn't have a lot of help on either side of him. He's been
Right.
helping with a lot of double teams and so on and so forth. But no, I can't disagree with you. Cousins has been bad, and sure he started last season poorly, and he had to apologize.
Hello.
After, oh, hello, can you hear me? Hello.
Ah, you're back there now.
Okay.
I lost.
Um,
Lost.
Yeah, I can't disagree with you in regards to Cousins. I mean, he last season he had to go after week 4 and apologize on his podcast, and Thielen came on, and they had we're not mad at each other moment or whatever. But it's just been terrible, and for whatever it doesn't really matter at this point in the context of what I'm saying, elite quarterbacks don't throw 3 picks in the first half. That just isn't something
No.
that you should have to deal with. And regardless of where that comes from, he's dealt with a bad line before, and so it just feels like yeah, it's gonna be rough. I mean, he said it himself. He's not if he keeps playing the way that he has. If he keeps turning the ball over, he already has like 150% of an increase in terms of his interceptions. He had 6 all of last year. I think he has 10 now, maybe 9. He knows he says he won't finish the season, but again, they're kind of stuck with him. Um, in terms of MVP, I would obviously go with Dalvin Cook. I think we saw the difference
Yep.
between him and Alexander Madison. I know Zimmer was kind of like how did he put it? It was strange that we didn't run the ball more, which is a really weird way to put it after the game, because it's like, are you really not cognizant of what your offense is doing, or what the impression that gives when you say
He said
things?
that. He said that during the Filippo time. It was strange that we didn't run the ball more, something
Yeah,
like that. And I just railed on that back then. You and I talking about, it, said, "You're the head coach."
yeah. It's like I
Tell
have
him
to
to
look.
run the ball more.
I have to talk to him. Look at the tape. It's like, aren't you in charge of that? Um. So yeah, I think we both agree with Dalvin. I mean,
I
he's
added a
improved
go ahead.
himself, and that's
Yes,
saying something, you know.
and he makes that line look even better than it is. I mean, he's got obviously more patience than the sophomore Madison does. Which is understandable, and he knows how to set up a block and find the right hole, and which can get him to the second level. Whereas Madison's a little more straight ahead at this point in his life. Get the ball, find the hole, go through it, and Dalvin is a little more finesse, and I think that makes him a better back. And then get him out there in the second level he goes. It's fun to watch. I also added a defensive MVP, and I was going to say Kendricks because he's the only one holding
Oh
it
yeah,
together back.
yeah,
Uh,
for sure.
it's a sinking ship, and he's out there bailing right, bailing left to get the water out of there.
Yeah, he's
But
everywhere, you know.
yeah,
And I think with Dalvin too, it's everything goes through him. The play action, the opening up the passing game, so on and so forth. And so it'll be nice to get him back. Hopefully he stays healthy, not solely because I drafted him or I traded for him in our fantasy league about a week ago, which uh,
but most all right,
yeah.
not slowly, but mostly.
That's
I'm
why I'm
kidding.
mainly calling for Zimmer's job is for my fantasy team. Um, it's pretty obvious, I think, who the best rookie is. We talked a lot about Jefferson
Yep.
earlier in the show. Who would you put as the worst rookie?
I had, that's a I'm not a very good moniker because all of them have played,
Yeah.
and I want to say the one who's least used has been Harrison Hand, and the biggest reason he's the worst rookie is because they've already got Anthony Harris and they already got a Harrison Smith. Now we throw a Harrison Hand in there. Who are you talking about? Harrison makes the play, So uh, he just hasn't been in there enough, and he didn't acquit himself very well last week when he did get a chance, unfortunately. So, but
Yeah.
nobody did. So that's the
Um,
only reason I don't have anybody else to hang it on.
Dance. I would say Dantzler. He's been borderline atrocious at times. There's
And borderline great,
Yeah,
and
he's
borderline
shown
great.
some flashes, especially recently. But
Yep.
there's been games where every targeted pass his way has been completed. I will give. Apparently, Jeff Gladney is the not just rookie, but the number one run stopping corner in the NFL right now statistically. So
Nice.
that's worth something. And so we'll see. I mean, how the rest of the season goes. Again, we're at the point where we're looking at 2021, getting these guys experience. I think when they didn't go after Snacks Harrison or Josh Klein, it was kind of a statement by the team saying, "This is what we have. This is who we're going to be, and we're going to, power through the season for good or bad to figure out, where we're going in the future." And I think there's obviously some logic to that, and it makes sense, especially when you have 15 draft picks and you're a newly extended head coach and GM. You don't really need to worry about anything beyond that. Um, but one of the main things that we did the last few seasons when you're writing, and that is something I always look forward to, is the bye week haikus um, that you've done for our site and for other sites before ours. And I know you had one for this week, and I actually have one too.
Nice. Okay. Well, you want me to go first?
Yeah.
Well, I always set it up by saying a haiku is a Japanese poem that's or verse that is 5 syllables, 3 lines, 5 syllables, 7 syllables, and 5 syllables, and it should contain some kind of theme involving the natural world. It to be
Okay.
an official haiku, and we're writing Vikings haikus, so this one goes as follows: Vikings ship on by, stalled mid ocean, dead water. No land ho in sight.
That's really good.
Well,
It's
thank
better
you.
than mine, and I forgot about the natural part.
That's
So,
okay.
so I'll just say that because it refers to me, and I'm a human being of this earth, that it counts.
There you
The Vikings are bad. Is it time for a new coach? Guess who told you so? Huh?
go.
Hey,
Yes, that I can see that coming from you in a heartbeat. You wouldn't even
yeah.
have to put your name on that, and I know what that's from.
I should have.
Is it?
It,
Did you answer that question? Do you think it is?
I thought I would do the clickbait thing and just put a question mark at the end of it. Let the readers decide. Do to be but to answer that seriously, not ri- I not right now. I mean, you might as well ride out
Yeah.
the rest of the season. I mean, Zimmer, if he has one major positive, it's that he can develop guys that he drafts or brings in via free
Hmm.
agency, and I think that there's no better person to do that, considering all the youth in the secondary, than him. I also don't really see the difference between firing him, having Kubiak as the interim head coach, and then what,
That's
keeping
right.
Zimmer and Zimmer Jr. And um, Patterson around. It's the same difference, pretty much. Um,
Yes, and Kubiak doesn't want it anyway. He was so
I
happy being up
that,
in the booth, and
yeah,
he'd bail at the end of the year. So I mean,
there's
you'd
no
have to get
way,
somebody new anyway.
and he retired from being a head coach for health reasons, and
Right.
this offseason, I think it was this offseason or late last season, they had this article in the paper about how low stress his offensive consultant gig was, and how stress free and happy he was, and so on and so forth. And then he moves up to offensive coordinator, and then yeah, I mean, again, there's not
You
much
can't fire.
difference.
Yeah, you can't fire Zimmer until you've got somebody that you absolutely wants to be here and ready to step in and take the job. Because Zimmer is for all his faults is not incompetent. He, he's old school, and that might be good or bad these days. I don't know, but I think, and I don't think he's lost the locker room yet. I think that defense still plays for him. But it's going to be probably his toughest challenge to finish the rest of this year and find some semblance of a decent record and see what I don't know. It's going to be bad all the rest of the way out. The way I can see it, starting when they get back from the bye.
Yeah, and that's not necessarily I mean, it is bad. I'm not going to pretend it isn't, but that could be a good thing in terms of the draft. And I wanted to get your to to end the show, get your take on something that I wrote about 48 hours ago. So there's that former punter Pat McAfee or whatever, who has that podcast that's super popular, and he came out this week and said that he has a source, and take that with a grain of salt, but let's just assume it's true for the sake of argument. A source from within the Jets that essentially told him that they are actively tanking for Trevor Lawrence. And I wrote that,
Really?
yeah. And I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if he had a source, because that show is probably the most popular NFL podcast,
Hmm.
especially for a new
A,
show. It's just getting more and more
a
popular each
punter.
week. Yeah, he's quite the character. So people really like him. I think he was on a reality show for a while too. He's just really funny and really charming and
He's
whatever.
he's trying to take over for Cluey apparently. But
Yeah,
anyway, go ahead.
yeah. um, and so my thoughts were that, let's just say, assuming this is true, and I did say it's a podcast. Take it with a grain of salt, because you'd have to be really, really stupid to even leak that in the first place. First of all, second of all, um, that would not surprise me either, because it's the Jets. But assuming that's true, I said that the NFL
Joe,
should investigate and punish the Jets in some way.
Joe,
What?
Joe, got some breaking news here.
What?
The Vikings trade Yannick Ngakwe to the Baltimore Ravens for undisclosed draft choices.
Are you kidding me?
Just came from the Vikings. Yep, I just happened to look as you were talking about
Are you
some punt.
kidding me?
I am not. So I, that I was going to consider him being one of the bright spots on this defense, and now he is gone. I wonder if they just thought they couldn't sign him or what.
Are
But
you
yeah, it just
kidding
happened.
me?
Just came across the wire a couple moments ago. So um, yeah,
Wow.
so put that in your agenda and smoke it.
Oh no. Wow.
Yeah, so I would say the tank is on.
Wow. Yeah, that's a really good what? Um if they had to have gotten better than what they traded for him.
Yeah, I can't remember what it was. Didn't they
I think
give
it
up
was
a
a
third,
third and a fifth.
or was it a second? Because they don't have a second this year, this
Oh
coming
no,
year.
it was a second, wasn't it?
Yeah, so hopefully
Um,
they got a second back, and they realize that they're rebuilding, and there's because they probably traded for him still thinking they had a chance because it was the beginning of the season, and they knew they needed to replace both Hunter and Griffin. So maybe they were still thinking, okay, we got a chance, but now they know they're in full rebuild here,
but
and
God, I mean that was one of the things where it's like next season, him and Hunter, it's gonna be really exciting, so on and so forth. But maybe his agent essentially came and said, he's not happy here and
yeah,
he's not gonna re-sign. So they decided to get what they could. But that is
exactly.
insane.
That's
Like,
crazy.
because they had to have, I mean, they knew where Hunter was at when they traded for him. So,
Right,
yeah,
correct.
okay. Well, yeah, you're right. The tank is on, but yeah, I mean, I'm sure it's sour grapes a little bit. If the Jets end up with that pick, but I think that it's really bad for the league from a competitive standpoint. Obviously, if teams are starting to tank for talent,
Maybe
it
why are they doing? Are they looking for another quarterback? They're not happy with Darnold. I know there were rumors this week about the Vikings trading for
yeah,
him,
I guess
but
that's the thing.
but
I mean,
what's why would the Vikings do that if they're not sold on him? If he's not their quarterback in the future, that's what the Vikings would want. So why would you trade for him? I
I
wouldn't.
don't know. And what would they get Cousins in exchange and take on his contract, or would
Right.
none of that makes sense. The only thing that
It
kind of
it
makes
did.
sense is San Francisco trading for Cousins, but then we would get Jimmy
Right.
Garoppolo and his bad contract. So
No thanks.
it's none of it's good. I cannot believe they traded Ngakwe. If they end up getting like a fourth rounder or something, people are going to lose their shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
my, oh my
Then
stars.
then you can start screaming at Spielman for that.
Yeah, I could
And
see it.
Zimmer because it was a trade for their defense, and Zimmer was always going to be bullish on that. So if I have to believe that they've got some decent draft picks. I think the Ravens are all in because they can see how the opportunity there is with in the NFC or AFC because they've already got a great defense. I have them on my fantasy team, and they are great every week. I don't know what their stats are, but I just know that they've been playing good. Now they just added a very good pass rusher. Man, they're going to be even tougher. So yeah, they're going for the. Maybe give the Vikings credit that they spotted someone who's wants to win now, sees their window open right now, and they got it says undisclosed draft picks. So draft choices, so they got more than one. So hopefully they better be high because if the Vikings, well, it's the Baltimore Ravens, it's not going to be a high pick. It'll probably be late in the first round because they're gonna finish. They're going to do well this year. I think the Ravens have a pretty darn good team.
Yeah, I think Josh Frey does our weekly power rankings, and he has them as number one. I think
Ah,
the for the first time in a while, it feels like the AFC is better than the NFC, doesn't it?
so far, I mean, when you got the NFC East, that's got like a pair. Don't have a pair of sticks to
No,
rub together to get a pick
they
or
have
to
a
get a win.
5-11 playoff team. Um,
Yeah,
then the Seahawks are maybe the best team, but the Vikings took them to the limit. Their defense is bad. The AFC you have the Steelers are good. The Titans are good. That's gonna be a great game this weekend.
yeah.
The Ravens, the Chiefs haven't been spectacular, but they'll figure it out. Even the
The Chiefs are going
Patriots
to be in
are
the
looking
mix.
okay.
I try to tell this to
The
somebody else I
Bills,
was arguing with. Yeah, the Bills are pretty good, but they got exposed last weekend. The Chiefs are going to be in the mix at the end of the year. You're going to have to go through Kansas City to get to the Super Bowl. There's no two ways about it.
uh, I should have brought this up earlier, but does it feel to you in any way that maybe Jefferson is better than Diggs? I know it's early, but it just feels like he's been making catches that we never saw from Diggs, like the over the top.
I'm not going to go there yet. I don't think so because he's still not as reliable going deep. I mean, Diggs is Diggs you could count on getting behind the defense and making a spectacular catch down. I mean, he really helped out Cousins, bringing in some passes that might have been out of his radius, and he got to him in the past few years. So I'm not going to go that far yet. I think he can be, but he's still learning the offense. He's still learning the game. He's just going to get better. The fact that he's doing this already is great, but I'm not going to say he's better than Diggs. I just can't.
Yeah, he has the potential though.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely.
But yeah, with oh god, I cannot believe they traded Ngakwe. I thought you were messing with me.
Breaking news on MJ's baby.
That's how we do it. And it's funny because we were this close to ending the show, and it's always been our thing where we end the show and 10 minutes later something huge happens.
Right.
Um, and so it's wow, it blows my mind. So I guess stay tuned to Vikings territory. The article's already up on there, thanks to Brady Vernon, one of our new guys, which is really cool. I'll write a reaction piece that's just a all caps what question mark exclamation point on purple PTSD and thanks everyone for tuning in. Check out manscaped.com. Use the discount code morningjoes, all one word, and you get 20% off and free shipping on your next order, which is pretty cool. Um, and check out the show that I just started doing with Wabi, Three Deep with Wabi. We're going to be live tomorrow night at 8 p.m. with Brian McKinney. If you have any fan questions, I'm going to put that out there on Twitter. Questions for Mr. McKinney or for Mr. Matt Burke. We will answer those this week and next week. But this has been Morning Joe's for the 22nd of October. We'll catch you guys next week. Skull.